at number 10, we have the crown jewels of England. Starting this list off with an absolute bang, we have the crown jewels of England lost in the 12th century. The bad King John was heading up a country in turmoil following the publication of the Magna Carta, and in the year 1216 he was travelling through the fens of England from Lincoln to King's Lynn. We all know that no good king travels without his jewels, and yeah, they're in the back. Unfortunately for the king, his baggage carriage became caught up in Fenland Wash and his treasure was sunk, never to be found. In the past 800 years, many have searched the treacherous wetlands for the chest, however, they've never been found. Guys, there's jewels right there. Coming in at number 9, we have the Lake Guatavita gold. Legend has it that the Colombian Lake Guatavita is home to copious amounts of gold. Tangled up with the legends of El Dorado, the lake was used in Indian rituals. During these rituals, golden artifacts and jewels were thrown into the water. In the 1500s, effort was made to recover some of the gold, to some success, but the lake proved impossible to sift through. Further attempts to drain the lake to find the gold ended in disaster. One group actually turned what was left of the water into mud that dried in the sun to form a type of concrete. Now this further tightened the area's grasp on what may be hidden in the lake. Coming in at number 8, we have the Crater of Diamond State Park. The Crater of Diamond State Park is located in Arkansas in the United States, and it's been given its name due to the fact that it boasts thousands of undiscovered diamonds. The park is on an old diamond mine, and on average 2 diamonds are found every day in the 37-acre grounds. The biggest diamond found there so far was the 40-carat Uncle Sam diamond, and this is the largest ever discovered in the US. As I said, there are still plenty out there, so I want to go find me some diamonds. While I definitely want to go finding diamonds, a place I really don't want to go is said to be hidden in the United States Superstition Mountains. Coming in at number 7, we have the cursed Lost Dutch gold mine. The Lost Dutch gold mine is said to be a glittering gold mine worth hundreds of millions of dollars. This was found by a German in America, Jacob Waltz, who settled in Arizona during the gold rush years. Waltz left a map to the mine where X marked the spot. X, by the way, was in the middle of a heart, and nobody loves jewels like Waltz. To this day, nobody has ever been able to find it. Many have indeed actually died trying. This has led to a lot of suggestions that the mine could be cursed. Coming into number 6, we have Money Cove in Canada. On the island of Grand Manan in Canada, there is a much discussed area dubbed Money Cove. Legend has it that the infamous pirate Captain William the Kid buried his gold on the west side of Grand Manan Island. This then earned it the name Money Cove. I love me some buried treasure. Now many have actually scoured the area, but as of yet they have found nothing. Next, a place where plenty has been found and there is still loads more hidden, we have Cocos Island in Costa Rica. The inspiration behind Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island, Cocos Island is a hotbed for treasure discovery. 19th century pirates hid millions upon millions worth of stolen Spanish gold on Cocos Island. They also left a map that was drawn up by pirate Mary Welsh. Attempts to find the gold were not overwhelmingly successful, although a few coins were found in the 20th century. An original inventory of the stolen goods suggests that there are 113 golden religious statues, 1 life-size Virgin Mary, 200 chests of jewels, which, oh my god, 273 swords with jeweled hilts, 1,000 diamonds, solid gold crowns, 150 chalices, and hundreds of gold and silver bars. Whew. 2 national park rangers actually came across most of the treasure in 2016 at a value of $200 million. However, it is thought that there are still several chests of treasure yet to be found. Can you imagine being those park rangers, just like, there's the treasure? Coming in at number 4, we have the Beale Cypher's treasure in Virginia. Thomas J. Beale was said to have buried over $43 million worth of treasure in Bedford County in Virginia. Beale is said to have given 3 encrypted ciphertexts to a friend detailing the whereabouts of the treasure. Now the treasure was weighing 3 tons in total, although nobody's ever been able to find it. These days, loads of people are arrested for trespassing as they try to dig for treasure on private property. All very Raiders of the Lost Ark. Up next at number 3, we have the Lost Nazi Gold Train. Rumored to be buried beneath the mountains in Poland, the Lost Nazi Gold Train contained a heap of treasure looted by the Third Reich. Reported to be somewhere in secret Nazi tunnels in the Owl Mountains, it's thought that the Nazis were trying to hide their stash from the advancing Soviet army. Whilst many have looked for the gold, it has never been found. Coming in at number 2, we have the treasure laid out in the Dead Sea Scrolls. The Copper Scroll is one of the Dead Sea Scrolls, and this this one depicts 63 locations over what is now Israel in which tons of precious treasure can be found. Detailed descriptions are given, the only problem is that the scroll was found in 1952, thousands upon thousands of years after it was written. As you can imagine, the landscape has changed somewhat since then. Finally, at number 1, we have the sunken treasure of Our Lady of Atocha. Our Lady of Atocha was the name given to a fleet of Spanish galleons that sank off the coast of the Florida Keys in 1622. The fleet were carrying hundreds of millions of dollars of treasure when they sank on their journey from South America to Spain. The fleet encountered a hurricane, which effectively meant that 24 tons of treasure was lost, sinking to the seabed. A lot of the treasure has been found, primarily in 1985, but a whole load of it is still scattered across the seabed. In 2011, for example, an emerald ring was found in the wreck, worth $500,000. That is just a literal dot in the ocean in regards to what still lies at the bottom of the sea.
Starting off at number 10 now, we have King Tut's curse. This is perhaps one of the most famous curses of all time that we're starting off with. In 1922, Egyptologist Howard Carter discovered Tutankhamun's tomb in the Valley of Kings, Egypt. To this day, it remains the only intact and complete royal burial of an ancient Egyptian pharaoh found in modern times. An inscription on the wall reads, "Death shall come on swift wings to him who disturbs the peace of the king." They ignored this warning. Carter and his team entered and began to remove the priceless artifacts. 6 weeks later, one of Carter's associates died from a mosquito bite. Soon after, relatives of the team began to die in mysterious circumstances. One famous example involved their secretary being found dead in her bed, which then drove her father to commit suicide. In total, there have been some 11 deaths linked to the so-called King Tut's curse, and some say they will never end unless the tomb's treasure is returned. Moving on to number 9 now, we have the Hope Diamond. This is one of the most famous diamonds in the world, a 45.52 carat piece that has been owned by a number of famous people over the years, going right back to King Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette, who owned it during the French Revolution and their beheadings after. They weren't the only deaths that legend has linked to the diamond though. They say that a tragedy befalls anyone who owns or wears it. Here are some random owners that I've just plucked out from the long list. Jacques Collet bought it and later committed suicide. Prince Ivan Kantinovsky was the next owner before being killed by Russian revolutionists. The original merchant who brought the diamond from India to Paris was later torn to pieces by wild dogs in Constantinople. This list of gore, misery and death just goes on and on. The last person to privately own the diamond was a woman called Evelyn McLean. She had her daughter die of an overdose and her son died in a car crash. Of course, these could all be just random tragic events. Some even say the stories were fabricated to add to the mystique of the diamond. But either way, the blood diamond now sits behind glass at the Smithsonian Museum. Moving on to number 8 now, we have the Lost Dutchman's Mine. Now according to legend, there is a vast and plentiful gold mine hidden somewhere in southwest USA. If you want me to be more specific, they say it's somewhere in the Superstition Mountains east of Phoenix, Arizona. In the 1840s, the Peralta family of northern Mexico supposedly developed rich gold mines in those mountains. They kept the location very secret though, and when they were supposedly killed by the Apache tribe, the secret of the mine's location died with them. Today, the area is known as the Massacre Grounds. A few decades later, a German man called Jacob Waltz set out to look for the mine. They called him the Dutchman. Now he tracked down one of the descendants of the family to help him find the mine. He and his partner Jacob Weiser worked the mine. There was more gold than they could ever imagine. They supposedly hid some caches of gold in the mountains. According to the story, Weiser was killed by the Apache tribe and Waltz died in Phoenix some 20 years later. He supposedly passed the knowledge of the mine's location onto his neighbor who cared for him before he died. Neither she nor other treasure hunters over the years have been successful in finding the mine. Many of them have met mysterious deaths during the search, leading to the legend of the Lost Dutchman and the cursed treasure he found. Moving on to number 7 now, we have Cahuenga Pass. In 1964, a shepherd named Diego Marino told people he had found treasure in the mountains near Los Angeles. Today, the area is called Cahuenga Pass and also Whitley Heights. The treasure was immense, more than $200,000 worth of of gold, diamonds, and pearls. They had been left there on the trail by 4 agents from Mexico. They planned to exchange them for guns to aid a political struggle in Mexico, but before they'd reached their destination, one of the agents suddenly died in a mysterious death. The other agent suspected French spies were trying to bump them off one by one, so they split the treasure up and hid it in the hills. When they found out that the treasure had been stolen, they blamed each other. A fight broke out and 2 of the agents killed each other. Another agent died later while breaking up a bar fight. Meanwhile, the shepherd was in a tavern on his way to LA to sell his new treasure. That night he had a nightmare in which he entered LA with the treasure and died. He decided the next morning to bury it under a large ash tree. The shepherd fell ill though on the rest of his journey. His friend cared for him as he died. The shepherd's final words were to tell his friend where the treasure was buried so that he could have it. Soon after though, his friend had violent convulsions and he also died. He was buried by his son and his friend. They did manage to locate the treasure, but as you can probably guess by now, one of them had convulsions and died when they were digging. The other then just ran for his life. They say the treasure still remains there to this day, buried under an ash tree along the Cahuenga Pass. Moving on to number 6 now, we have the cursed dollars. In 2011, a 49-year-old man from Illinois found a bag containing $150,000 in his garden while he was picking broccoli. He told police and turned the bag over to them on the understanding that if the money was not claimed by anyone else by the end of 2012, it would be his. Eventually, his 87-year-old neighbor staked a claim. Before she died in January 2013, the woman, who suffered from dementia, told the court that she had gotten rid of the money because it was cursed. The court decided to give the bulk of the money to the woman's daughter and give the man a small finder's fee. However, just 10 days before he was set to collect his money, he died suddenly from diabetic problems after waiting 2 years for his share. Curse or tragic timing. At the number 5 spot now we have the Money Pit. In 1795, 3 teenage boys stumbled across a man-made hole on Oak Island, just off the coast of Nova Scotia. Theories about who dug the hole range from Spanish sailors from a wrecked galleon to British troops fighting during the American Revolution. Whoever made it, legend says the hole has ancient treasure inside for anyone with the skills to retrieve it. So far, they have found wooden barriers, a strange layer of coconut husks, and a mysterious code written on a stone. It was deciphered and found to read, 40 feet below, £2 million are buried. It's because of this that treasure hunters from all over the world have flocked to the island, hoping to be the ones to cash in, and many of them have met strange deaths. In 1861, a water pump exploded, killing a worker. In 1897, a man died in a pulley accident. In 1951, a team used a clamshell digger that fell off a barge and sunk. Most famously, in 1965, adventurer Robert Restall, his son, and 2 of their co-workers died after inhaling poisonous gas while trapped in the hole. The Money Pit has claimed a number of victims over the years, and nobody is any closer to finding the treasure. Moving on to number 4 now, we have the Koh-i-Noor diamond. Just like the blood diamond we talked about earlier, this is a very expensive, very famous diamond that has been blamed for a number of deaths over the years. They say there's records of this diamond going back 5,000 years in the Middle East. The curse was first mentioned in 1306 though. The 105 carat diamond came with a Hindu text that read, "He who owns this diamond will own the world, but will also know all its misfortunes. Only God or a woman can wear it with impunity." So there you go, for any of you females watching, the curse won't affect you. Also, that's true if God is watching this video. It won't affect you either. It was stolen by the British in the 1800s. Queen Victoria had it cut up into small diamonds, some of which can be seen in the coronation crown of the Queen Mother. Is this a nod to the fact that a male can never wear the diamond? Perhaps. Do we have any volunteers watching to test out the theory? Next up at number 3 now, we have Charles Island. This island is located off the coast of Milford in Connecticut. They say that the whole island has been cursed not once, not twice, but 3 times in history. Thrice. According to legend, the first curse came in 1639 when the Paugussett tribe chief traded it to the European settlers, but not before cursing it over their kidnapping of his daughter. 60 years later, Scottish pirate Captain William Kidd was lured to the island in a trap that led to his trial and execution. He apparently cursed the island that led to his downfall. Fast forward to 1721 and a group of Connecticut sailors stumbled across some treasure in Mexico that belonged to an Aztec emperor called Guatemotzin. The sailors brought brought it back home to Connecticut, but soon after, disaster befell them that led to the death of 4 out of 5 of their group. The last man panicked, believing the treasure to be cursed, and buried it on Charles Island. In the years since, many treasure hunters have tried and failed to retrieve the cursed treasure, and locals blame the cursed island for the lack of any humans settling there in all this time. Next up at number 2 now, we have the Curse of the Amber Room. Have you ever heard of the 8th wonder of the world? That's what people used to call this room. It was a gift to Peter the Great in 1716, celebrating peace between Russia and Prussia. It was covered floor to ceiling in gold and jewels. The walls were made of pure amber. Fast forward to World War II, and the Nazis managed to take control of the building and the room. Then they took the room. No, really. They took it. They took it apart and carried it bit by bit back to Germany. After the war was over, nobody knew where it was exactly. Some say it was buried in the mountains, others say the Nazis stole a fake one and that the Russians still have the real one. Either way, there is apparently a curse attached to the whole thing, supposedly. The curator of the room while the KGB investigated the case died of typhoid. An investigator was killed in a car crash after talking about it. A famous Amber Room hunter was mysteriously murdered in a forest. I'm beginning to think that this room doesn't want to be found. And finally at number 1 now, we have Qin Shi Huang's tomb. Qin Shi Huang is known as China's first emperor. When he died in 210 BC, his tomb was filled with everything that his people felt was appropriate for a man of his standing. This included hundreds of slaves, concubines, gold and jewels, as well as thousands of terracotta soldier statues. They make up what is now known as the Terracotta Army. As you can see from these pictures, the area is huge and a lot of it has actually been excavated, except for one area. To this day, the mausoleum which actually holds the emperor's body is off limits to all. Well, the official line is that the site is surrounded by a thick river of mercury which could easily kill excavators who are not too careful. Others say that this is just a cover story and that the tomb and its final treasures are protected by an ancient curse. There are writings that talk about a number of booby traps to protect the area. Are the scientists put off by the thought of this too? Either way, of all the treasures we've looked at so far, Qin Shi Huang's might actually remain untouched.
Starting us off with number 10 is the Black Prince's Ruby. If you've seen any of the English coronations, then you have seen this gem. It's smack dab in the middle of England's imperial state crown, but it's not actually a ruby, it's called a red spinel. Also dubbed the Great Imposter, it has quite a bloody history. It belonged to the Sultan of Granada initially and was found near his corpse by Pedro the Cruel after him and his men stabbed him to death. After obtaining it, Pedro's reign was challenged by his half-brother who appealed to Edward the Black Prince for help. They won and Edward was given the stone as a thank you. Around that time he contracted a disease as well and died from it 9 years later. Is the timing coincidental? I don't really know. Henry V was wearing the stone during the Battle of Agincourt where he nearly died, and Richard III was wearing it when he died during the Battle of Bosworth. It was later sold to a jeweler in the 17th century and the curse continued by nearly destroying the jewelers with a mysterious fire. Thankfully the jewel hasn't done any damage since, but I think it's done enough damage to last a lifetime. Coming in at number 9 is the Hope Diamond. Honestly, this diamond is probably worth more than my whole life and I'm not even mad about it. This gem is one of the most famous jewels in the world and the earliest ownership records date back nearly 4 centuries. It weighs a hefty 45.5 carats, is a dark greyish blue colour and is apparently cursed. It was first bought in India in 1668 by John Baptiste Tavernier and the gem was initially called the French Blue. JP, I'm just going to call him JP, JP sold it to King Louis XIV, but it was stolen towards the end of 1792. A diamond of similar proportions was found in the possession of a London-based diamond merchant Daniel Eliasson in 1812, but by that point it was renamed to the Hope Diamond. It passed through King George IV's hands and then landed in Henry Philip Hope's hands. There's a lot of weird S sounds anyway. In 1909 it was sold to Pierre Cartier and then it was sold to socialite and heiress Evelyn Walsh McLean. Its curse was massively upplayed when it was being sold to her because apparently unlucky things made her lucky. She used to have Find the Hope parties where she'd hide it around her house and guests would have to find it. Someone could have easily just stolen it like easily. But anyway, things started going downhill very quickly. Her son was killed in a car accident, her husband ran off with someone else whilst destroying their fortune, and then died in a sanitarium. Her daughter OD'd on sleeping pills, her family newspaper The Washington Post went bankrupt, and then a year later she killed herself. Wow, that was a lot. At number 8 we have the Koh-i-Noor diamond. Can we just have a moment of silence for the fact I will probably never see a diamond of this size ever in my life? Thank you. This 186 carat diamond had a curse that only affected men. Hindu descriptions of the diamond said, "He who owns this diamond will own the world, but will also know all its misfortunes. Only God or women can wear it with impunity." The name is Persian for mountain of light, and it went through many hands in its time. The emperor who built the Taj Mahal had it, but his son imprisoned him in a fort after a coup. Apparently it was initially close to 800 carats, but a Venetian gem cutter reduced it to around 186. It was in the hands of many local rulers, almost all of which met with really bloody deaths. Finally, in 1849, a treaty was signed and the stone was given to Queen Victoria. But the story just doesn't end here. On its journey to England, there was an outbreak of cholera on board, so locals in Mauritius threatened the crew and told them to leave the port or they'd attack the ship. A storm then occurred lasting 12 hours, and then finally it somehow made it to the Royal. As a result of the curse, no male heir has ever worn it. And they probably never should. Filling our number 7 slot is the Blue Diamond Affair. Now we have no idea where this diamond is, and we also have no idea if it ever truly existed to begin with. Back in 1989, a Thai janitor working at the Saudi royal family's palace snuck into Prince Faisal bin Fahad's room and stole a lot of jewelry. Like a lot. Royal family probably gonna have a lot of jewelry. He hid the jewelry inside the bag of his vacuum cleaner and then smuggled them to Thailand. Amongst the stolen gems was, you guessed it, the blue diamond. However, here is where it gets tricky. According to Thai authorities, the diamond never existed. They arrested the janitor, but not before he had sold a lot of the jewels. He was put in prison but released after 3 years, and most of the jewels given back to the Saudi royal family were fake, and the blue diamond was still nowhere to be found. After that, a slew of disappearances and murders of Saudi businessmen and diplomats who had gone to Bangkok to investigate the robbery raised major alarms. And I mean, why wouldn't it? Thai authorities insisted, however, the events were not linked to the diamond robbery. In 1995, the police officer in charge of the case was sentenced to death for ordering the murder of the janitor's wife and son for making the fake jewels. I mean, that's harsh. The kid was only 14 years old. Let's cut him some slack. Either way, the diamond is meant to curse anyone who handles it illegally, and so far that's been everyone who has handled it. Now at number 6 is the Delhi Purple Sapphire. Okay, first things first, it's not even a sapphire, it's an amethyst, and it currently resides in London's Natural History Museum, and it has done since 1944. The gem came mounted on a ring in the form of a snake, and it was accompanied by a letter which said the stone was looted from the treasure of the temple of the god Indra at Kanpur during the Indian Mutiny in 1855 and brought to this country by Colonel W. Ferris of the Bengal Cavalry. From the day he possessed it, he was unfortunate. Colonel Ferris died after he got the gem. It was then given to his son, then to a man called Edward Heron Allen, who gave it to a bunch of his friends who he said suffered from a trail of suicides, apparitions, disasters, and failed careers. Allen eventually got it back, obviously his friends obviously didn't want it, and decided to close it inside 7 boxes and give it to his bank, saying it shouldn't be taken out until 33 years after his death. Well, his daughter waited less than a year before taking it out and donating it to the museum, and they've continued to ignore the letter's suggestion that the gem should be cast into the sea, and they haven't been screwed over yet, so far so good, I guess. Coming in at number 5 is the La Peregrina Pearl. Now this one weighed in at 50.6 carats and was actually one of the biggest pearls in the world. The name means the wanderer, and it was found in the Gulf of Panama during the 16th century. King Philip II gave it to Queen Mary I before their marriage, but he left her after she couldn't give him a son. And she went on to become Bloody Mary, so that's already one victim gone rogue. The pearl was given back to King Philip after her death, and he proposed to her half-sister Elizabeth. Or already, like that's just weird. How can you marry a sister then propose to her sister? It stayed in that family till the 19th century when Napoleon Bonaparte invaded and took the pearl. It went through the Bonaparte family for ages before being sold. It was then auctioned in 1969 to Richard Burton, who gave it to his wife Elizabeth Taylor. Not sure if you've heard of her, probably not, she was just a small-time actress, you know how it is. But anyway, the couple married and then got divorced twice, after which Elizabeth kept the pearl and married 8 more times. Either way, it was dubbed the tempestuous token of love because no romantic relationship has ended well where the pearl is concerned. At number 4 is the Star of India. I've never actually seen a gem like this. It's a pale blue oval with a white star all over it, and it weighs 563.35 carats. It's one of the biggest gems in the world, and it actually has a star on both sides of it. It was initially mined in Sri Lanka and then donated to the American Museum of Natural History. However, towards the end of 1964, it was stolen alongside a bunch of other gems. The thieves unlocked a bathroom window all during open hours, went in at night and got the sapphire. It was the only one in the collection protected by an alarm, but against all odds the batteries of the alarm were dead and no guard was assigned to that room. So the robbery was pretty much foolproof. Fortunately, most of the jewels were recovered from a bus terminal locker, but a curse surrounded the gem ever since. Filling our number 3 slot is the Sansi diamond. Now this one is a pale yellow gem weighing in at 55.2 carats. Again, massive, may as well be as big as my head. No, I'm kidding, but anyway. It's said that whoever has the gem will succumb to a violent death, while others say it makes you invincible if procured under honest circumstances, which I mean is fair enough I guess. It reached Europe from India in the 14th century, where it was placed in the crowns of many kings: Charles the Bold, France's Louis XVI, and England's Charles I. But they all suffered horrible deaths after coming into the gem. One legend associated with the diamond was especially gruesome. A courier was transporting the gem for Henry IV when he was robbed and murdered. The stone had to be retrieved from his stomach because he had swallowed it for safekeeping. It was later stolen during the French Revolution, but somehow was found and is now on display at the Louvre. Well, they really shouldn't have been playing hot potato with this diamond, but then again, it may have just been knowingly passed on and used to cause harm. I mean, it could happen. You never know. Now at number 2 is the Regent, and this story is also particularly gruesome, so let's dive into it. This one was also mined in India in the early 1700s, as most of these gems seem to have been. It was stolen from the mine by a slave who actually hid the gem in a self-inflicted wound on his leg. Desperate times, man. Desperate times, you gotta do what you gotta do. He struck up a deal with an English sea captain to smuggle the gem out of India, but on the day the captain drowned him and sold the jewel himself. But before he died, it said the slave put a curse on the gem, and I mean, rightfully so. He didn't just self-inflict a wound for storage to then be drowned for that same gem. The disrespect, I swear. An English governor called Thomas Pitt ended up buying the diamond and sold it to French Regent Philippe II of Orleans, hence the name the Regent. It was stolen during the French Revolution with the Sansi, but was then found. But then Napoleon I set it in the handle of his sword and died an untimely death. This one was just wrong and screwed up from the very beginning, like nothing about this story was good. Nothing at all. And finally, at number 1 is the Black Orlov. Now this one's really juicy, I'm not gonna lie. Weighing in at 67.5 carats, it was said to have initially been the eye of an idol of the god Brahma at a shrine near Pondicherry. It was then stolen by a monk, which is said to have kick-started its curse. In 1932, a diamond dealer called J.W. Paris took the gem to the US and soon after committed suicide by jumping off a skyscraper. It later belonged to 2 Russian princesses, Nadia Orlov, who it was named after, and Neolina Baryantinsky, both of whom committed suicide by jumping to their death in the 40s. After the string of tragedies attached to it, Charles F. Winson cut the stone into 3 pieces in an attempt to break the curse. Whether the curse was broken or not is unclear, but the story gets shadier. Diamond scholar Ian Balfour said there's no evidence of any black diamonds found in India or even a Russian princess called Nadia Orlov. I mean, maybe she was just a more like low-key princess, you know, like not a big time, just a small-time princess, who knows. Starting us off with number 10 is Charles Island. Now the island is located offshore from the town of Milford, Connecticut. It's not that big, it's around 14 acres with no real structures on it whatsoever. And the only interesting thing about it is the fact it's been cursed 3 times already. The first time was by the chief of the Paugussett tribe, who was so upset by the invasion of white settlers, he cursed the island to never accept them and make their structures disintegrate, which worked because the line is actually too unstable for any permanent structure anyway, and it's never been inhabited for long. The second curse came 60 years later. Scottish pirate Captain William Kidd stopped there and buried a huge trove of stolen treasure, and it said that whoever uncovered it would face a life of misfortune or death, which is what I feel like we face anyway, so sure. And the third and final curse was 22 years after that. A group of sailors stashed a bunch of treasure on the island that apparently once belonged to Mexican Emperor Guatemozin, who had cursed his treasure himself. Now 4 of the 5 people who found his treasure initially were all killed by the curse, but the sole survivor tried to save himself by dumping it and its curse on Charles Island. If getting cursed thrice wasn't bad enough, get this. In 1850, 2 treasure hunters apparently went to the island in search of these treasures, and they managed to actually find a hoard of treasure. I mean, good on you, you got it. But when they got round to opening it, they were attacked by a flaming skull or skeleton. They managed to escape, but their sanity declined quickly, and both spent the rest of their lives in an insane asylum, which really sucks. Coming in at number 9 is the 9-time killer. This one takes place at the Cahuenga Pass, which is a low mountain pass located in LA. So back in 1864, 4 soldiers were sent by Benito Juarez from Mexico to San Francisco with a bunch of treasure, jewels, coins, etc. They went to buy munitions for the Mexican War, but one of them died on the journey there, and so the other 3 buried the treasure for safekeeping. However, a man named Diego Morena was watching this and made off with the treasure after the soldiers left. He stopped overnight at the Cahuenga Pass, but had a horrible dream that if he took the treasure to LA with him, he would die. So he buried the treasure there, but still ended up dying anyway, so that just really wasn't ideal. But before he died, he told his friend Jesus Martinez where the treasure was, so him and his stepson went out to look for it. Jesus had a heart attack and died as they started digging, and his stepson was shot a decade later. A tiny bit of the treasure was found in 1885 by Shepard, but he fell overboard on his way back to Spain, and the gold in his pockets made him sink to the bottom of the ocean. And no, the death just doesn't stop there. Finally, in 1939, an oil expert called Henry Jones took a film crew to the area to excavate the treasure, but all they found was dirt and then some more dirt. And Jones later committed suicide because of the epic fail. So this one bit of treasure essentially brought 9 people to their death. Maybe stop looking for it, guys. Just a suggestion. At number 8 we have the Amber Room. Now the Amber Room was a gift given to Peter the Great back in 1716, and it was even dubbed the 8th wonder of the world at one point. The room was filled ceiling to floor with jewels and mosaics, and the walls were made with 20 different hues of amber. And back then amber was a really precious commodity, so this room was basically used striking gold. So towards the end of World War II, the room itself was stolen. The Nazis took control of it and dismantled it for safekeeping. They displayed it in a museum for 2 years before the room straight up disappeared. People say it disappeared because of the curse the room came with. Now the museum's curators both died of typhus, and their bodies couldn't be found ever, and the doctor that signed their death certificates also vanished at the same time, which was also just sus as hell. General Gusev was also someone who was linked to the room, and he also mysteriously died in a car accident. The cherry on top was George Stein, who was probably the most prominent Amber Room hunter in the world. He was found naked, dead, with his stomach cut open in a random Bavarian forest. Filling our number 7 slot is 40 feet below. Now Oak Island is a tiny island located off the coast of Nova Scotia right here in Canada. Back in 1795, 2 boys saw weird lights on the island, so they decided to investigate, and they found a freshly dug hole. Pirates were abundant in that area at the time, since Nova Scotia is a maritime province, so the boys hoped the hole had inside of it a large amount of treasure. They dug and dug but found no treasure. They found wooden barriers, layers of coconut shells, and then finally a strange encoded message. When deciphered, it read 40 feet below, 2 million pounds are buried. When that message was deciphered, you can bet on anything that people all over the world started trying to find it. Even Franklin Roosevelt tried to find it before becoming president. No one has found it till this day, but some have definitely died trying. The first death was in 1861 when a pump exploded and killed a worker. The next was 6 years later when Maynard Kaiser died after the rope that was lifting him from the pit fell off its pulley. So close, yet so far. And the third was in 1951 when a clamshell digger slipped off a barge and sunk. However, the last fatality was in 1969 1865 when Robert Restall, his son, and 2 other workers died after falling into the pit and inhaling noxious fumes. I'm surprised at how well the curses on these chests of treasure actually work. Like, people are legitimately dying in many of the points on this list just for finding or having found the treasure. I'm shook. You should be too. Now at number 6 is the Lost Dutchman's gold mine. Again, this sounds like something out of The Simpsons, but it is not. The Lost Dutchman is a gold mine hidden somewhere in the east of Phoenix, Arizona, near the Apache Junction. The name or curse of the area comes from a man called Jacob Waltz, who wasn't actually a Dutchman, he was a Deutschman, so he was German, but the name ended up sticking anyway. Jacob spent 20 years looking for gold, and it's said he finally did find magical veins of gold there before his death. The Apache tribe in the area always knew it was filled with gold, but the thunder god convinced them to stay away from it and not go looking for it. Francisco Vasquez, a Spaniard, tried to mine for the gold, but his men started turning up mutilated and murdered, so he gave up. In 1845, Don Miguel Peralta actually found a vein of gold, but was massacred by angry Apaches for going against their warnings. Yikes. In 1931, a treasure hunter called Adolph Ruth actually disappeared whilst looking for the gold, but his skull was found 2 years later with a note that read Veni Vidi Vici, aka I came, I saw, I conquered, implying that he did find the gold before dying. Either way, these veins of gold have not been found by anyone that has managed to live and tell the tale, so maybe we should take that as a sign. Coming in at number 5 is the Templar treasure. Now this title just made me really happy because I'm a huge fan of Assassin's Creed. I've played every single one, so even though I hate Templars in the game because they just get in the way of all the quests, I was like, wow, a reference I understand. But anyway, fangirling aside, in 1312 the Knights Templar were dissolved for good by Pope Clement V, and they started getting arrested all around Europe. And if you don't know what the Knights Templar was, it was basically a group of knights that had to protect Christian pilgrims who were traveling to the Holy Land. But before they were caught, it said that they hid a bunch of treasure, and a lot of it consisted of holy relics like the Holy Grail that they apparently found in Jerusalem. The last Grand Master of the Order was fuming and cursed the King of France and the Pope for causing the Templars' decline. Weirdly enough, both men ended up dying the next year, and the treasure was never found. At number 4 is the Ghost Train. At the end of World War II, it was pretty evident that Germany was in bad shape in every aspect. So they decided to go into survival mode and hide valuable treasure that they had accumulated over the past 6 years from looting museums and Jewish families around Europe. So in the Alpine forest of Austria, Nazi officers sunk billions of dollars worth of Reichsbank's gold into Lake Toplitz to keep it hidden. In 1959, divers managed to find containers filled with millions and millions of dollars of fake currency from the Allied nations. It was part of the Nazi plot to destroy their economies by causing inflation. I mean, petty, but fair. To date, 7+ people have drowned in this lake looking for the lost Nazi treasure, but it's believed that it should never be found due to the people who hid it. All that bad karma resurfacing at once, that's just not good. Let's just let bygones be bygones and leave it at the bottom of the riverbed. Honestly, they probably hid it nowhere near the lake, and this was probably just a cover-up. Conspiracy theories. Filling our number 3 slot is the Lost Ark. About to dive into history right now, as I've been this whole video, but the Ark of Convent was a holy relic that contained the broken tablets of the 10 Commandments that Moses got from God. It's meant to be so powerful that when the Israelites were banished from Egypt, it was the Ark that was said to have parted the Jordan River. It was also said to have been the reason behind the fall of Jericho. So it definitely pulls its weight, that's for sure. But people have said if it lands up in the wrong hands, then terrible curses would ensue. When the Philistines took the Ark, the whole city got a deadly case of hemorrhoids, and the Ark was then returned to the Israelites. There's also a ton of rules about handling the Ark itself. The poles holding it can never be removed, it should only be carried on your shoulders, if you touch it you could die. There are just so many good and bad things said about it, and not every finder knows. The Ark's whereabouts today are still unknown, and maybe it's better that way. Now at number 2 is the Toxic Tomb. I'm loving the alliteration that just happened there, it wasn't even planned when I made the title. Okay, it was. But anyway, one of the oldest tombs in the world that has never been opened belongs to China's first emperor, Qin Shi Huang. He died way back in 210 BC, and buried with him inside his tomb were hundreds of jewels, gold, slaves, and even concubines, as well as thousands of very intricately made terracotta statues. Because a man never dies alone, people, am I right? His tomb site is larger than the site of the Great Pyramids, and although a lot of the rooms have been excavated, his actual mausoleum is is off limits. It's supposedly cursed, and writing has even been found claiming there are booby traps all over the area protecting him. If that doesn't deter the average treasure hunter, the tomb is also surrounded by a river of mercury, so if you fall in that, it could be deadly. Hence, in the 50 years of exploring this tomb, not once has anyone tried to enter the mausoleum. And finally, at number 1 is Tamerlane. Now Tamerlane, or Timur, was a Turco-Mongol conqueror, and he founded the Timurid Empire in Asia and Persia and ended up being its first ruler. He died in 1405 during a winter military campaign, and he was entombed with the amount of treasure and jewels fit for a great emperor, so imagine that. In 1941, Soviet anthropologists tried to desperately find his tomb against the warnings of the Muslim clergy, warning them not to disturb his sleep. His body ended up being exhumed that same year, and they found an inscription on top of his tomb. It said, "When I rise from the dead, the world shall tremble." But that didn't stop them from opening it and taking his body out, even though they probably shouldn't have. And surprise surprise, there was another inscription inside the tomb which read, "Whomsoever opens my tomb shall unleash an invader more terrible than I." And 3 days later, Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa, the largest military invasion of all time. Should have listened to the inscriptions, guys.